Welcome, everyone, to episode 7 of In the Hot Seat. For our repeat viewers, welcome back. Thanks for coming again. And for those people that are new to the show, every 2 weeks we try to bring in industry experts, customers, and put them in the hot seat for what we hope is a lively discussion, some debate, some disagreement, perhaps, and some discourse that as we try to humanize the digital experience. All technologies used to the phases of the journey as well, so it's fair game. Customer experience, fair game. And just a side note, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, you may see a bug that people have been reporting, and I've seen myself actually. So if you have issues, you can always go to YouTube or Facebook, and because we're live there as well.
And if you are on the LinkedIn, you could always hit the refresh button if you don't have the choice to go to another platform, and then it'll bring you back to the point in the discussion. But
Hopefully.
Michael, this is so exciting, right? We're in the final episode of what actually started out, I think we were calling it our 5-part series, but when I went back to count, we're actually on episode 7. So this is the final episode of the series called Experience the Engagement. This one is really exciting, right? Because the expectation line has blurred between B2B and B2C with regard to customer experience. It's really the same now for everyone, right? Everybody, whether it's our professional or our personal life, we want easy to use, intuitive products. The explosion of everything that's been put out there, right? The self-service sites, the mobile apps, the low-code, no-code solutions, they've changed the way that customers interact with products. They've also, however, increased the complexity for delivering that positive experience, right? So what we're going to talk about today is how can you ensure that your products are designed to deliver the best user experience possible? We're putting 2 guests in that hot seat. We have Jim Wilton and Sara Watling who are joining us to answer this question. Because, Michael, right, it kind of shocks me how long it has taken for our personal and our professional worlds to merge, right? I mean, why has it taken so long for us to stand up on both sides and be like, wait a minute, I want it to be easy to use everywhere?
Yeah, I've been watching this for a long time. I mean, as an analyst at IDC and at G2, and I can tell you that I think we didn't realize how much of an impact consumer was actually having on the B2B buyer, user, whatever. I don't think this is a new phenomenon. I actually think this goes back, I call it the Facebook syndrome, right? It goes back to all of the social network and communication tools, and they all tried to make it really simple, right? And keep everything, all the complexity hidden under the covers. And I just feel like it's a habit that we all learned through the use of all those platforms. And I think it's been going on for quite a while, but I think now we're just starting to wake up to it.
And it pushes that envelope, right, when you're designing products, because there is this different mindset, I think, when we're rolling out a solution for the enterprise versus a solution for the consumer at home. And now with this line being blurred, it really changes the way that we think about those enterprise solutions. So it's going to be really interesting to hear what Jim and Sara have to say, because there's so many things that you need to take into consideration, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about the enterprise apps for so long that you used at work, I mean, they were just painful, right? They exposed the spreadsheet to you, so you could see all of the underneath, all the complexity, and frankly, the experience was just poor. And I think that's something that a lot of companies have struggled with on both sides, the vendor and on the user.
Well, I think it's time to bring in Jim and Sara and see what they say is the best practice. What do you think?
Sounds good.
Let me introduce our first guest. Jim Wilton is currently the Chief Product Officer at Nuvolo. Nuvolo is a market-leading integrated workplace management system B2B software provider. That is a mouthful. They offer real estate, capital project, space management, maintenance management, and sustainability solutions to Fortune-level companies, federal government agencies, and some of the best hospital systems in the world. Jim's prior experience includes professional services, marketing, and sales leadership positions at various B2B software companies around the globe, and he holds an MBA from Pepperdine University.
And I get the pleasure of introducing Sara. Sara Watling's the CEO of JALI. It's an award-winning Toronto-based team developing best-in-class speech synchronization and facial animation tools with, that power 3D performances in games like Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2, or Cyberpunk 2077. If you're a gamer, you've definitely seen some of their work. All the animated and interactive series and entertainment. Over 20 years of sales and marketing, relationship management, coupled with the rare talent for harnessing chaotic genius. That is a talent. Sara's built a company driven by a mission to build cool, powerful, and useful production and real-time tools that their customers use to advance their competitive edges, best-in-class storytellers.
Awesome. Let's bring them on.
Bring them in.
Hey, guys.
Welcome.
Hi, Jimmy, Sara.
Happy Monday.
Hi, everybody.
Happy Monday to you. So we were bantering a bit in the before we brought you in and talking about the impact of customer B2C experiences on the B2B world and customer experience particularly. And so just to kick it off, I mean, what do you guys think about how has all of this social media networking changed the way that the customers want to interact with you and what kind of interactive content they're looking for or expect from you? Sara, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of how social media impacts our customers' experience is how they find us. And so that journey has to include a whole lot of sort of wayfinding and education for them, so that when they end up emailing us for, the kind of solution that we provide, which is automated facial animation, they actually have already sort of qualified a little bit in terms of understanding what they need technically, what our solution actually provides, and what their desired outcome is. And then, so for us, it's our job as salespeople and also as product developers to help guide them on that journey, because it's quite a rich soup out there of content to have to wade through, and it actually asks a lot of consumers to self-identify and select as this kind of customer versus that kind of customer. Do they want, they hear automated, so they want to press a button and it be done. Now, our actual, the majority of our customers are technical experts and they're engineers, and we sell directly to, the studio rather than individual artists. So they have a degree of, not just a degree, quite a bit of savviness about not only what they need to get done for their studio's goals, but also the tool itself. And we actually work quite hard at helping them get to their desired outcome. When people are looking at building something maybe that's more consumer facing, like say a chatbot or a digital avatar or that kind of thing, that customer and their journey is completely different. And so the product has to reflect that.
That makes sense. Jim, how about you? Have you seen this consumerization impact the expectations that users have of the products that you guys sell?
Yeah, for sure, Michael. I mean, if anything, it's driving us to be better, right? As people join the workforce that, have grown up on, social media and on their phone and all of that, they do have an expectation that things are going to be more intuitive, that they're going to require less training, that it's just going to work, right? Like that's what we hear a lot. And I would say that, the challenges are in the B2B world that, we're usually dealing with a lot more complex processes. We're dealing with a lot more data, and a lot of additional people that are in any kind of extended business process across, cross-functional teams. And so trying to rationalize all of that with those kind of simpler expectations is often a challenge. But as I said, I think it drives us to be better, right, at what we're doing. And I know, like, from a Nuvolo perspective, we invest, quite a bit in user experience and design and whatnot. I think the other challenge that I often face is with enterprise applications like ours, right? There's always a expectation that it's configurable, right? You can't just bring it and say, this is it, this is what you're going to use, because everybody, although my experience is 90% of the processes out there are kind of the same, even if people don't realize it, but there is a unique aspect to every organization or every company that is just unique to them. And so for us, what the actual end user at one of our clients, the solution that they will use is not even what we had designed it to be out of the box. It's that flavor that the client puts on it. So in a way, it's our, we can do a lot of work to, on user experience and design, and we do, right? We have, we have people that are, like I said, focused on this, and we invest in it. But ultimately, it's how that specific client decides to change the application, to configure it, add additional fields, add process, add workflow that can make it seem quite more complex than even we intended it to be. But, if that's the right solution for our clients, then that's the right thing. And then I also often, one last point is, I often differentiate between, the application, does it look, for lack of a better word, like beautiful or not, or does it work, right? And those two things often have a difficult time, maybe coexisting, right, in the same place, right? So yeah, those are my kind of initial thoughts.
Well, it's interesting when you were talking about the ease of use and the application piece of it. I think there's another piece to the user experience now in the enterprise, right? Everything is, appified, if we think about it that way, right? Because as you said, Michael, we're used to those social media tools as a consumer. And now I think about even the applications that I access from a business standpoint. I don't go to my desktop and try to log into my screen, right? I'm on my phone or on my tablet for the convenience, and I need an app version of that, which there's almost two different user experiences for that, and two different design elements that we need to take into consideration, which just, adds another whole level of complexity. So, I'd love to hear from each of you, how should one think about those experiences for the customer working, the desktop, the mobile app from a business perspective, taking best practices from the consumer side?
Yeah, Jody. So for me, I would even add a third thing in there, right? Because we design for mobile devices, tablets, and desktop, right? And those three user experiences are often completely different given the native capabilities of the devices, right? But our world used to be very simple in a way, where we just worried about desktop, right? We worried about everybody's on, not even laptops perhaps back then, not to age myself too much, but like everybody's on a desktop, or everybody's on a green screen, or to go way back when. But like for us, we actually have to go through the process of every, let's call it, just for simplification, like every screen somebody's on, it's what does the mobile version of that look like? What does the tablet version of that look like? And it's not just how it looks. It also can function differently depending on, that experience. So it's added, it's added a lot more complexity and a lot more work. But how we tackle it is we differentiate between, is this like an end user, piece of functionality? Okay, we can assume that 80% of the time it's going to be consumed on a phone or on a tablet, right? And we can adjust that way, but in effect, it's created a lot of additional work from a UX perspective to address all the expected ways that they can interface with our solution.
I think even to add to that, in terms of layers of complexity, that sort of development, that UI development, is also in line with the various contributing technologies that are at play as well. So a lot of what we're doing in our space is harnessing, new advances in AI and ways in which we can interact with motion capture and other ways of creating digital content. The product's maturity sort of is in step with what's actually possible. And our end users are even ahead of that, because they're the ones that are pushing the tech forward, because that tech is happening as a result of them wanting to do a thing. And so for a while, there's almost a comfort, or at least with our specific users, there's a comfort with a degree of product in development, because they are the ones who are actually informing its development. They're the ones who are combining it with other bits of hardware, other bits of technology, other new cameras, new processing methods. And then once that sort of matures, then you have the obligation, anything that's not on the edge now has to go back, and these layers of sort of abstraction that enable greater adoption need to be applied.
Yep. And one thing I'll add there is, like, since a lot of what we do is around the workplace, like what Sara said about new technologies, right? For the last, I would say 12, 18 months, we've had people asking questions like, okay, when you go to work, you have an ID badge, right? You have badging systems that allow you to get into places. Well, now what people realize, what do you mean? I got a smart lock on my home where my teenager just taps his phone and he can get into the house. Like, why do I have to have an ID card at work? Why can't I just use my phone to tap, tap? And again, we have our clients doing that, or I can scan a QR code on my phone and get what I need, right? Check into my workspace, check out, right? And so, of course, there's always there's always a delay in how those technologies are adopted, but we have people, particularly because of the pandemic, that are accelerating from a workplace perspective a lot of these technologies, and we as vendors are trying, we want to be out in front, but in a lot of ways we're just trying to keep up with the expectations. So
Michael, I think we have a great question here from Christy that ties in with kind of tracking. Right. So if I could interject a real quick question, because it goes off of Jim, what you were saying, how do the platforms that you build your products on respond to needs as you respond to your customers' needs? And also, how are you monitoring the way that your clients are using applications to best understand how they're using them in ways that you didn't anticipate? Kind of unraveling two questions there, but
I think they lead us to kind of to the same place, which is, how involved are we with our customers day to day in order to drive product development forward. So for us, our customers are developers themselves. They're developing sometimes even competitive products to us because they're developing solutions to get a larger thing done, whether it's build a AAA video game or a series or a film, that kind of thing. And the solutions that we build have to work into larger platforms that they would build. So say, for example, Unreal Engine or Autodesk Maya, these are all sort of industry standard platforms that our customers use. All of them require, because they're constantly iterating, fairly involved developer communities. So we lean on those communities to get information and support for developing the technology that our customers use. They use those same developer networks to do the same thing. And so it's a constant feedback loop with these different support communities to make sure that we're staying ahead of not just the way our customers want to use these technologies, but how it's functioning, their interoperability, how well they're compatible, ways in which they're not, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I would add, Nuvolo, we're built on the ServiceNow platform. So, we have lots of communication with them and their team and from a platform perspective, right, on how we're, what we're hearing, what's going on out there. Of course, they're, quite a large company, so they're doing a lot of that themselves as well. So, that's great. We also utilize tools, right, to see how our applications are being used, right? So we can collect data. That in itself is a bit of a challenging, endeavor, just because we want to do things in an anonymized way. But when you're a product person, you want to know specifically, what did Jim do on Tuesday when, this. And so, we are often challenged with that because we need to anonymize the data, but still, get some feedback. And so what we do is, we just engage directly with clients, right? And as much as we can, and groups per product, right? And of course, the job of a product manager is, he or she is doing this and getting that feedback from kind of a trusted group of folks. And again, that's also a difference of B2B back to that and B2C applications, right? Because these B2C applications, they're able to gather massive amounts of data on the usage, right? They have millions and millions of people, right? Most enterprise software companies don't ever get to that point, right? So you're dealing with a smaller, sample size, right, of a group of folks. So it is challenging, but there are ways to do it. But I think in B2B, my experience is, it's as much art as it is science, right? And a lot of it's on the product manager's, his or her shoulders to do that.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
it's interesting that you bring up the feedback directly, and in fact, I mean, I know both of you use some form of agile development, right? And in the process, we even call it user stories, right? But how real, how much can you in a B2B environment really bring that customer voice into the process in more than, in nearly real time sort of ways to build in that direct feedback? Because I think, over the times, like we used to do focus groups and things like that, but that's just not fast enough in the pace that we're in today. So how do you guys do that?
Well, you're right. It is problematic to scale that kind of direct interaction with your user base. But for us, it's critical. The skill set that we've had to develop as product developers is the ability to telescope in and out quickly and generalize what we are building or developing that's specific to say a given project or a given studio. Our best case scenario was when we're an ad hoc part of the team, in a de facto sense. So we're actually developing directly with their requirements. And then the onus is on us once we've, validated a number of elements for this to look at what is actually going to be generalizable for a larger group and what unfortunately is specific to one customer's needs.
Yeah. And I just very little to add to what Sara said, because it's very difficult to do. And it's something that we focus on, and the better we do the better our products are. We also get a lot of direct feedback, not just while we're building the product, but certainly we bring in internal experts, external experts, right? But it is a living, breathing thing. So, even as we're out doing demos or doing
That's right.
implementations, we're constantly bringing that feedback back, right? And I know, Michael, like you said, we all use agile development methodologies, or agile-y kind of development methodologies, right? I mean, again, none of the software companies I've ever worked for are pure agile, right? There's always a little bit of, waterfall that, still makes its way in there, because ultimately in B2B, you do know what you're going to build, right? And we break it up into initiatives and epics and user stories and all of that. But, it's truly not a mapless adventure that you're going off on, right? You kind of know where the
Exactly.
the destination is.
There's, I think what's interesting though about that sort of direct involvement is there's value that is even though you know where you're going, what the end product is, the solution that you're trying to build or the problem that you're going to solve. The more involved that you get to be with a given, say, user group or customer, is the value that you couldn't have known without that proximity. So there's a lot of features that now are mainstays in our product that were told to us, like this, and not like you should build this, but just in discussion, and we were doing this with this, and now we can do this, and now this has allowed us to extend our motion capture budget, or this has allowed us to, and that's not as our origin story, that might not have been the problem that we had set out to solve, but that may now be our biggest piece of value that we can deliver. That's actually one of the best parts of this whole thing.
Well, and actually that ties in. Christy's on fire. She put in another question that I think is really relevant to what we're talking about right now, right? In terms of generations and their impact on how we're developing products. And she has a great example here, right? How does the upcoming generation change the game for your business? And she gave that example, if you could see it on screen, where young sailors knew how to use a PlayStation controller right before they enlisted. And now the Navy has moved to using them to control vessels so that it's intuitive. That's crazy. I mean, it's ingenious, right? Because you're taking like a gaming device that we know everybody uses and loves growing up, and now they're literally controlling really big submarines and vessels. So it's what's the impact with the generation change? How's that changing things for you?
Yeah. Well, I would just add, I'd be more comfortable with Xbox, but we won't go down that. We won't go down that path. But yes, it's adapting, right? It's adapting to what the generations that are coming in, right? I mean, technology changes, the way you interface with information changes. So, and I think intuitive is the right word, right? I mean, that comes back to me of back in the day, right? 15 years ago, when you rolled out an enterprise application, there was a massive training plan, and there were in-person classes, and there were, books that thick of training materials. And now they want to do as little training as they can. They just want to push a button and have it be on people's phones or on their desktops. And again, that, it's how we design the software. We need to design the software to that. So like Christy's example, the Navy and PlayStation controllers, that's what we try to do as well. It's just we don't often have as clear cut of an example, right? So
Yeah.
So, as a part of this, Sarah, I'm particularly interested in what you guys are doing. And I said I'm a gamer too, so I get kind of where you guys are going. It's really exciting, but what's the impact of audio in this, right? I mean, because you're doing more than just the user experience from a UI perspective. I mean, you're adding realism to the entertainment and particularly in audio. How does that affect the user experience?
So, I mean, there's an interesting relationship that gamers have. That's a direct input to the way that we develop our product, the way that they experience gaming, that sort of experience of immersion, not wanting to break that, that kind of thing, is what we are trying to enable studios to deliver. We process audio. So what that means is when someone, you have your voiceover, voice recording, and that's the input signal that we process in order to generate animation. What's changed from a technological standpoint that's interesting is the improvements to synthetic voice. And so synthetic voice or text to speech, that kind of thing, is now getting to a point where there are some solutions that are incredibly lifelike and believable. And what that enables is a much quicker path to real-time experiences, and because it's all faster processing, and also, it's a much lower budgetary requirement on studios when you can actually use, because normally they would use synthetic voice as scratch. So you'd lay that track first. And then once you're set with your blocking and that kind of thing, then you would bring in your hired actor, your voice talent, and you would lay that over top of that. Now your text to speech is oftentimes good enough for the final outcome, and so that's a huge difference to the process in general.
When we were talking earlier, Sara, you brought up a good point about, you selling to studios or to the developers who then sell to the studios. So there's an additional level, right, of feedback that you're getting. And I'd like to kind of dive into those demands of scale, right? So when you really start going 1 and 2 levels down and getting feedback from multiple sources, multiple levels, I mean, that applies a lot of complexity, right, to your development process. So can you talk a little bit about, dealing with those demands of scale and how you leverage that within your organization?
So at the end of the day, the person that's across from myself or my sales team is usually a technical artist or an animator or a producer. And that's it's very, very infrequent that we would actually speak directly to a gamer about the tech stack that a developer uses to build their game. What we do see is the response on social. And like the developers that we work with, gamers are incredibly exacting about the experience that they want. And so we may be thinking that we're developing something amazing over here and we've got pipeline solutions that are nailed down and awesome and all of our team is excited. And then, then you get to see on Twitter and YouTube and that kind of thing, people's actual feedback. And, there's quite a bit of it that we do take into account. We apply that to how we develop our language models. People are very, very intuitive and perceptive when it comes to how characters that they're invested in behave. And it doesn't take too long for that kind of negative feedback to affect a Metacritic score, to affect a review that could directly impact price per share. And so we're responsive to that feedback, but it's sort of like it's secondhand. That then gets funneled back to us through either the producer or the developer. This is a thing that we can't have happen. Like they'll show us like a video clip that's getting lampooned online and going, no, this can't be us. So we know we're often given a quality benchmark that we have to help them hit.
It's interesting because when I think about monitoring on the social channels, right, putting my marketing hat on, I'm thinking about it from the marketing and the brand, and
that's right,
versus product build and product development and UI. So it's interesting because I've never really thought about it from that perspective, right? I'm thinking about it from an advertising or a brand perspective, and there's a huge component to that with your teams.
Oh, it's huge. People will or they won't buy the game. And if they don't buy the game, very unlikely that the developer is going to look favorably at the tech stack that they put in place to build that game and go, yeah, we're going to do this again.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious to bring Jim into this for a minute, because you also have kind of an unusual situation, because what you're building, you sell to the management of the building, and then they deploy that as a portal out to their renters or as well, right? So you're actually doing that 3-level out too. So how do you think of that? I mean, how do you incorporate that real end user into your development process?
Yeah, and Michael, we do that sometimes, but our primary one is more to sell to not like the operating company that's using the building as opposed to landlord. We do some landlord stuff, but it doesn't change the question in that, we have what I was going to mention too is we are all in the world of feedback, instant feedback, right? Okay. And although I as well, I'm a gamer, right? And I get way more, I'll get pretty emotional about giving feedback, right? Now, typically in the B2B world, you can still have some level of emotion, but for us, the thing that's changed the most is, again, not too long ago, when a company bought enterprise software, it was a one and done, right? Like you paid a lot of money, right. You own that, right? You paid some incremental, maintenance, support things. But now we have clients signing on as a SaaS company for multi-year agreements, but we have to renew them every so often, right? So, we are driving satisfaction, right? We have a whole customer success organization that is making sure we're getting that feedback, right? We're getting that. But we do have different constituents in that world, right? We have the executive level constituents that have specific needs. We have the management level. We have the people using the software, right? And so we do have to gather feedback, for all those different personas, right? Which is difficult because they often ask for things that are in direct conflict with each other. And we have to play kind of like therapists for them, right? Internally, and say, hey, if you do, listen, your executive team wants to do this. And everybody's like, yeah, we don't want that. Like, okay, well, and so we can only be so successful at that, right? Solving those internal issues. But for us, it's how do we take all of that feedback and how do we make sure that the products we're producing are driving value so people do renew, right? And Nuvolo, we're very fortunate. We have a really, really high, above market rate, like, renewal rate, right? So, people generally do like our products, right? And are happy with that. But that doesn't mean we, that a lot of hard work doesn't go into that. So anyways, I know, Michael, I don't know if I totally answered your question there, but for us, it's that's also a good driver. It's a forcing function for us to work on constantly improving our products. And so, get it. But I will say getting that feedback is a little bit tougher because I mean, I'm sure it happens, but people don't go on Twitter and Instagram and, and give direct feedback like I would, on like, let's say, the last, Battlefield 2042, which is, there's a lot of feedback about that out there, right, as a game. But for us, we have to dig harder for that feedback, right? Because we often don't get it instantly, right? So, and we have mechanisms where we can get that and they can give it. But again, for us, it's that would be both a great and a scary problem to have, to be able to go on Twitter and search hashtag whatever and be able to get direct feedback from users. Most of me would like that, right? So,
maybe you can take a clue from our new Twitter owner. I mean, he runs polls on there all the time. I mean, you could do that on there.
yeah, I think his latest one, he's supposed to leave now, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
He is. That's a dangerous question to ask in any environment, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ask my team that question. I don't know.
Nope.
And you bring up a great point, Jim, right? Because I agree with you. I think people jump quickly when there's a negative experience and they have something not nice to say, right? Or not favorable. It's all over every social media account.
Yeah.
But when it's positive, they're not so quick to jump at that, right? So and there is a piece or an element of those loyal customers and kind of driving that same mentality of getting that customer loyalty out into the social channels with positive experience. I mean, I think, down the road, could there be a time when, we gamify that in some sense, right? Because gamifying everything makes everybody want to get involved and collect badges and win discounts. And I mean, there could be a piece of that gets your positive experience out there a little bit more.
Yeah, very much, Jody. And what I would say, like, for me is, people expect companies to tell you how great they are. And this is where I put on my former CMO hat too, where but for me, it's how do we encourage, our clients to say great things about us. Right. And yeah, gamifying is something we've definitely, I've definitely, thought about and tried to put in place programs to encourage that type of behavior. But yeah, no, it's definitely that classic thing of, if people are have a lot of something constructive, I'll say, to tell you, you're very much going to hear it. But if they're just happy, like, it's kind of almost like sometimes it's that C or F kind of mentality of, if you're doing what you can, you're good, but if not, you get an F, right? So it's definitely a challenge. And also people have different personalities, right? And some people are happy to share and some people aren't. But again, it just comes back to me, the importance of a good product management team, that can find that information from B2B world. Because again, it's not always easy.
Jim, one of the things that I before I was in my current role, I was at B2B review site G2. And one of the things that we learned, through amassing literally millions of reviews, was that if you just wait for that feedback to happen organically, it's almost always negative.
Yeah.
But if you shift that, if you proactively search for that feedback, you can actually get to the message and prove that you're much better than perhaps that one disgruntled customer might make it out to be, right? So, right. I mean, it sounds like you've seen that as well, right? You reach out, run the program.
Yeah, Michael, for sure, right? Like my product, from a product management perspective, it's, as a good product manager, you have, that you're aware of that circle of people, right, that are using your product, the ones that, offer good feedback, the ones that offer tough feedback. Those were always my favorite as a product manager, right? But yeah, you have to coalesce that. And then like at any software company, there's that level. And then we have like at Nuvolo, like a client executive program, right, where I'm interfacing with other, like a select group of our clients at the executive level. And again, I may be getting, completely different feedback that our product manager is about, how things are going there. The executive may be really happy, right? And the end user may be, may have some suggestions for improvement. And again, I think it's just the differencing views and the drivers of, the person using it is thinking about, their daily use, and the executives thinking about more of a long-term, higher level view and how much they're paying, for that tool. And so, again, it just comes down to those individual drivers. But yeah, it makes for a very complex, construct to get the right feedback and then distill it down to a point where you can actually improve your products, not just for that one client, but for, your community of clients.
That's right. There's for all of advances in the ways that we can sort of scale our sales operations and our product development operations, and look for ways to sort of, shorten that length of time or shorten that feedback loop. At the end of the day, there's still some very sort of classic things at play, and it's still a very heavy, it's relationships. It's a lot of time invested in building strong relationships. So even when the feedback is constructive or negative, but if X and Y changes, then it'll be positive again. When the relationship is good, that feedback is a lot, it's easier to elicit, because they'll make the time for you to speak to you candidly. Yeah, that's so we're still doing as developers in our marketing way and in our executive level, where it's a lot of talking.
Yep.
Actually, you both just answered my next question I was going to throw out there, to say, for the folks listening, for the folks who are going to watch the recording, what is the one piece of advice that you would give someone to think about how to build a positive user experience, taking some of those B2C best practices? And I think you both just encapsulated it really well, right? I mean, I'm writing down little notes down here about gamifying the loyalty and building relationships. And I have one that I'm going to throw out. And I think we start the wave for all of our organizations with #feedback - the company name. Like, let's just get that started so that becomes a standard, right? That's how people give feedback out on the social networks.
Exactly, Jody. And I would just, again, totally agree with what Sara said. We are digitizing our lives a great deal, but it's your relationships, however you connect with those people, whether it used to be a conference call or, whether it's now, your Teams messaging them, right? It's the relationships you build with the people that you build things for that will determine your success or your failure, right? And if you're, those relationships have to be, like any good relationship, a two-way communication street, and people that are honest. And so anyways, is the more things get more digitized, the less it it doesn't change the need for the relationship you have with the people that you're building your products for. And if that's not good, right, if that's not good, you're gonna struggle. It doesn't mean you may not be successful, but you're gonna struggle.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jim. I think every time we interact with a new potential customer who doesn't decide to adopt the product, it's actually more important for us in that instance to make the most use of the available resources at our disposal with that given instance, to make that a positive, even just a positive exit experience, because they'll still speak out in the industry or out in the space positively about you, even if they didn't go and use your product, even if for whatever reason it wasn't a good fit. Maybe it's a timing thing, maybe it's a technology thing, maybe it's it could be a laundry list of things. But if that interaction was positive, you listened to what they were doing, you provided some value in that conversation, perhaps you were able to let them know about something tangential that can actually help them get what they need done, even if it's not you. That's capital now that you've invested into that relationship that will pay sometimes. You hope it does. Out into the space. And so that person is still championing you, even if they're not using your technology.
Oh, absolutely, Sara. And one thing I'll just add there really quick is, I have been involved in the sale of software at multiple different companies to the same people, right? And so, you come back to, if you leave a really bad impression in 2009, it's not going to go away, right? So, you have to play the long game and realize that, those related, even even if they choose not to go with you, then for various reasons, right? You will run into that person again. So, it's keeping those relationships, on a good, positive, slate and leveraging them throughout your career.
Customer advocacy is definitely the long game, right?
It is.
No matter where you are or where you end up, customer advocacy is key. Well, everyone, this is all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Jim and Sara. You both survived the hot seat. Thanks for joining us today. This has been great. I love this conversation. I'm excited. I have some hashtags that I want to get out there into the social world now. So if you think you have what it takes to be in the hot seat, for those of you watching us today, please let us know. We would love to hear from you. That's your episode of In the Hot Seat today. Thank you so much for being with us this week. My name is Jody Spencer.
And I'm Michael Fauscette. Tune in next time for some different faces, different topics, different perspectives as we get somebody else in the hot seat.